There are a ton of weapons to choose from in Warhammer 40,000 Darktide. From the two-handed Eviscerator, the Psyker's four-sword, or the Plasma Gun on the Veteran, you can pull from so many different portions of the Warhammer lore that it makes for a lot of exciting combinations. In theory. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. With so many different types of weapons, there's bound to be some winners and losers. But right now, there are just some weapons whose design just keeps them completely flawed. An example would be the Thunderhammer. We've seen the improvements Fat Shark wants to make, but all those buffs to damage against carapace armor still doesn't fix one of the weapon's biggest drawbacks, the animation lock after charging it. So we'll be going through 12 weapons that I think have some sort of design or animation flaw, preventing them from truly being remarkable weapons. And let me preface by saying that all weapons in the game are at least just usable on the highest difficulty of damnation. But the weapons in this video are overshadowed by a lot of their peers just by nature of odd limitations on the weapons. So don't feel if you're using anything here, you're sucking at the game. Nay, quite the contrary actually. Play with whatever guns and melee weapons you enjoy playing with. That's all that matters really. You can jump ahead to any portion of the video that interests you the most using the chapters in both the timeline and the description. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitch as I stream Darktide Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday every week. You can find that linked in the comments section as well as the description below. We do community matches, giveaways, and I ramble about a lot of dumb stuff. Lastly, if you end up enjoying the video or if you're heading out, please don't forget to like, comment, and or subscribe. Each one of those helps any content creator you watch in a huge way, while also funding my mini Aussie's unending treat addiction. Let's get started here on Can Darktide Weapons Be Fixed? The first weapon I want to talk about is actually arguably one of my favorite ones, and it is the Assault Chainaxe. Now, this is one of three current chain weapons in the game: the Chainsword, the Chainaxe, and the Eviscerator, the two-handed chainsword. Hopefully, in the future, we'll be getting a two-handed Chainaxe like the Mauler uses. And the Chainaxe, by and large, isn't a terrible weapon. Like I said, I actually very much enjoy using it. I have a lot of fun with it. But the biggest problem is that it causes a lot of weird camera glitches, and every time you use the charge attack, it can kind of get stuff a little funky. So let's go ahead here. We're in the Psychanium for the entirety of this video, really. And if I come over to a Mauler and I go ahead and just kind of, the camera can get like a little funky here. And if I really go to town on this, sometimes can just kind of oddly throw the camera in weird directions too. And what really sucks here is you can see my character's moving in a pretty fast pace. But as soon as I go to swing, see how the camera kind of janks a little bit? And like it has trouble like kind of sawing through stuff and it slows me down. That was actually added in the most recent patch. That slowdown was increased with every single hit of the Chainaxe. And the Chainaxe, all of its combos, going back into this, all the combos here on the light attacks are strike downs. That pretty much prevents you from being able to do any kind of reliable horde clear with this weapon. So if they increase the damage value on, say, any of the damage versus light armor or heavy armor, or damage against carapace or flak, it's good and all, but it still suffers from the fact that even the Vanguard swipes, the heavy attacks, are not really that great at horde clearing. They can still do some damage, but it's kind of more of like a weird cross between a vertical and a horizontal slash, and it prevents you from being able to really do a ton. You're really kind of locked into block, push, swing, block, push, swing, kind of like you are with the Eviscerator, but with all the less cleave targets, less cleave damage, and more of like a weird camera locking that you sometimes get when you're using this thing in rapid succession around a lot of different creatures. So the Chainaxe, while I really, really enjoy it, and it can be a very fun weapon to use, it suffers from a lot of really clunky gameplay mechanics around every time you hit something, slowing you down, forcing the camera to stay on the subject, and making it so that you can't really kind of succinctly dodge with this thing at the same time, unless you want to just outright animation cancel what you're doing. Ah, the Thunderhammer, everyone's favorite iconic zealot weapon. And to be honest with you, it's a very fun, really cool weapon. It's enjoyable, even with its big shortcoming. And that shortcoming is relegated to charging the weapon. Now, I've compared this to the Mauler. The Mauler can charge and kind of continuously spam its attacks. But with the Thunderhammer, every time you charge it and swing, this is just a light attack, it has kind of like a recoil before it comes back into your hands to be used again. And that is the kind of drawback to this weapon, because while that's happening, you move slower, things can hit you carte blanche, you cannot hit them, and you can't really even block, cancel, or switch weapons to cancel it sufficiently. So I'm going to show that off again. I'm going to charge and then light attack, and I'm going to spam pressing left click until we finally get a click to go, or a light attack to go through. So here you go. We finally get it to go through that much later. So if I kind of show you, I'll do this. And look how much slower I move that whole time. So if I'm in a press situation, I'm trying to kill this guy, well, I'm now locked. I can't do anything. So if I charge, swing, and try to... That's how long it took me just to switch my weapon to try to cancel that animation. So you really can't get out of this. You are locked into dealing with it. And because you have to deal with it, it doesn't matter how much more damage this thing does, it's still relegated by being locked up by that animation. You do have the ability to do some kind of minor cleaving attacks here with this thing, which is kind of nice. But then again, your mauler is the crusher is really what you're going to be doing for your cleave attacks. Now, I don't expect the Thunderhammer to have this level of activation, rinse, and repeat. Like, this is my crusher, and I can just kind of go to town with this thing. I don't expect it to have that. But I think a kind of a sweet spot between this and the current Thunderhammer animation would make the weapon so much better, so much more viable, and an actual contender for like the best quote-unquote Zealot weapon if it wasn't so hamstrung by that long animation. And we all know that the combat axe, the Antax combat axe with Brittle Momentum is an amazing weapon. I'm going to get into that in just a little second here. But really, the big problem here is that every other axe, for the most part, doesn't have an amazing combo situation. Some do. Some tack axes actually have very good combo setups. But take a look at this one. We get Assassin and Strike Down. I have zero real wave clearing capability. And I know that that is kind of the trade-off you're supposed to get choosing the tactical axe here, right? And especially the enhanced mobility of this bad boy. So I don't think that every single combo setup for every single axe needs to be changed. I'm not really saying that. I'm saying that the Antax has, by and large, one of the best combo setups in conjunction with Brittle Momentum, which makes it so strong. I don't want to spend too much time on that because I have it as its own entry. But looking at a lot of the other axes, they kind of fall short in their usefulness because of that kind of limitation on the combo setup. And I think that that's kind of an unfortunate thing of a lot of the conventions, of a lot of things in this game, where the combo setup, which would have originally kind of made it like, okay, this tells me this is a strong single target damage weapon, results in a weapon that kind of falls short because even though it's a strong single target damage weapon, in the max difficulty, you're still dealing with tons of wave clear. And if you don't have someone that can sufficiently shut down that wave clear, or if that person's downed, or you're in a situation where you're cut off from that person, you need to do your own wave clear. So having a strong single target, while a cool way to play, doesn't necessarily equate to a one-to-one in this game because you still have to deal with large groups of enemies. The mobility on some of these things does help out with that, but not the ability to not be able to clear those things sufficiently. On that note of combos is the Heavy Sword. The Heavy Sword just recently got a round of buffs, and there's either 3 or 4 different versions of the Heavy Sword, but really the only one that kind of shines is the Mark 9 Heavy Sword. And the reason behind it is it has a ton of Vanguard swipes, and its special attack is a / combo starter. Let me show you how that works. So, I also have a really good blessing on this one. For the Vanguard strikes, you're just spamming left click and you can just control a horde pretty easily with this Heavy Sword, which is really cool. And for the combo starter, it means that the next follow-up hit is going to be a far faster hit. So if I press the special and then hold down left click, it just immediately jumps into that heavy attack after it. If I just press left click a bunch of times, it takes a lot longer to get these going versus just getting those combos going with that special. So the Mark 12's in a great spot, but the rest of them are not. And this comes back to, again, a combo issue. These combos are not overall great. It's a Vanguard followed by, Vanguard followed by Relentless, Vanguard. And it doesn't really even work like that too well. Or this one over here is Relentless, Vanguard, Strike Down. So I think the bigger problem here with the heavy sword is not the damage, which we've seen increased. It's the fact that the combos fall short. The damage does make the Mark 9 that much better, but again, we're hitting a situation where these things have a combo limitation. If the heavy sword, if the claw sword, if the chain axe and sword were all able to be comboed with Laspistol, which, spoiler alert, it's in this video, then I think it would make the shortcomings of both weapons become shored up immediately, because then you have the additional benefit of being able to use either the sword with the Laspistol or a Laspistol with the sword. So I think, again, we can hit another situation here where those combos do end up hindering the weapon's overall use. The Force Sword has so many good things going for it, and it's got unlimited dodge, it's a cool weapon because it's the prolific Psyker weapon, but the biggest things holding it back is the fact that the charge on it, which is kind of one of the biggest draws for it, is also one of the things that's holding it back. So if I charge up and swing at this guy, I'm stun locked that entire time. So if someone decides to hit me, whatever, or a dog jumps on me, I'm screwed, a trapper, I'm screwed, anything like that happens, it's no fun for anyone. And that right there is another problem. I just did the charge attack, and it does kind of the animation of a brain burst. It even blows his head up, but it does not give me a warp charge. If it gave me a warp charge, it'd be great, because I'm getting all the benefits of using not all the benefits, all the downsides of using a brain burst by gaining peril, doing the animation, everything like that. But I'm not getting the benefit of it, aside from killing the target, which is pretty sweet and all. But I think that charge attack, it not being such a locking portion, and I think it's kind of weird too, because when you're in the Psychanium, like that too, like that's what I was going to bring up, is that if you do it to a maniac, it like commandeers the camera and forces you into a weird, awkward position on top of being locked and not being able to move around. Like, right, see, I'm locked and can't really maneuver out of that. And if something decides to hit me or someone decides to kill it in that time, my camera's now down here and it's kind of funky. So that's a bit of a design issue for me. And I would really love to see this give warp charges, because it would make using it that much better, especially like a Force Sword melee style build for the Psyker, which I'm sure can be done when we finally get crafting unlocked. But all those things kind of hold the Force Sword back from being a truly great weapon, because you have unlimited dodge, all these other stuff going for it. That's the kind of stuff that kind of hamstrings it. All right, you knew we'd get here. You knew we would talk about Brutal Momentum at one point. And I don't want this weapon to just be nerfed to the ground. I don't think that's fun. I think Brutal Momentum maybe needs a little bit of tuning, because I just think it's overtuned. I think that we get these really kind of gnarly bear traps where something's so good that the developer just kind of cuts the legs out from under it and it's never good again. I think rather that the Brutal Momentum is really good with the Combat Axes combos. It's not necessarily that one or the other is stupid overpowered. It's that everything else doesn't feel good with either Brutal Momentum or their combos, which we're kind of going to get to when we talk about the Axes combos. So this Combat Axe is actually like a level 27 Combat Axe on my level 30 Psyker, and it's great. It's still awesome. I don't need to really, I do want a better one, but it's still just like stupid good. And I think that is kind of like the bigger problem with it, is that it's like, man, I'm still getting so much use out of a level 27 weapon, and all the peers just really can't size up to it because of just the amount of damage that the Brutal Momentum can deliver. Brutal Momentum is a really cool thought too, right? Like, you kind of get it with the Eviscerator and Savage Sweep. So it's still a really cool thing to have in this game. I just think that both of them in conjunction are slightly overtuned, and slightly changing one or the other, or making the other weapons have a better combo that can also benefit from Brutal Momentum, makes it so the combo of Brutal Momentum and Antax Combo Axe, or Antax Combat Axe, isn't the king of the melee meta anymore. I think just making those other weapons better is the more crucial point, not making this worse. The first ranged weapon I want to talk about is the Plasma Gun. And it's not a bad gun, not really, but I think it's very funky in the way that it's used. Okay, I'm going to charge this up, and I'm going to shoot, and I'm going to do damage. I'm going to charge this up, I'm going to shoot, and I'm going to do damage, all the way up to 100%. Now, if I were to charge and shoot this, I would die. If I hold down the special, I'm going to vent, but I'm going to take damage too while doing it. Okay, well, I can also charge it shoot, charge it, shoot, and then just reload, not take damage, and vent. And another issue with it is, and that's not necessarily an issue, but just the kind of ethos behind all that doesn't really feel like it makes much sense because it also takes ammunition. I feel like if this thing didn't have ammunition, it would feel, I think people kind of look at that and go, ah, that's going to make it broken. But the fact that you're limited because of the overheats means that it doesn't really matter how much ammunition is there because you really can't blow through the ammunition like you can, say, an auto gun. You're not going to be sucking up the entire map's ammunition because this is your biggest limiting factor. And unfortunately I'm not 30, so I cannot show this off, but sustained fire, volley fire reloads your weapon and replenishes 60% toughness. This does not apply to the plasma gun and venting at the same time. If it did that, if it reloaded and vented the gun, it would immediately make it far more viable at 30 in tier 5 domination because you don't have to be so held back by the reload and venting mechanic of the gun itself. It just feels very funky. I mean, it feels like, honestly, I'm just never going to use the right click because I still do plenty of damage to armor just kind of idly shooting, and I stagger. Oh, I hit 100%, just kind of vent for me. Like, it doesn't ever feel like there's a need to go to use the right click, which kind of feels funky. So I think that those things kind of hold this thing back from being that true replacer of the bolt gun or anything like that. I think rule of cool and having a fun, different playstyle makes me want to use the plasma gun over the bolt gun, but I know in a certain try-hard, sweaty situation, I'm going to switch to the bolt gun or maybe even the MG12 Lasgun because of the reliability. And I think that's the kind of shortcoming for the plasma gun and how it can maybe be made just a little bit better. Second gun I want to talk about is the Headhunter Autogun. Now, these recently got a pass in the last patch to increase their damage. That's all great, but I think that the Headhunter Autogun falls short with a number of other things. Namely, its ammo, which is not a design flaw. That's a simple fix. I think that both the infantry, the braced, and the Headhunter Autoguns could all stand from a small ammo increase to make them far more viable. Even then, the braced autogun is really good. So is the certain infantry guns. But the Headhunter Autogun suffers from really poor, let's get to it, sights. It's a really shit sight picture. I mean, it's better than the Lucius-pattern Lasgun, which again, spoiler alert, that's on this video, in this video. And with the Zealot, I can activate, and I can actually kill this guy in less than one clip, which is really good. So the Headhunter, I think, is almost there. It's almost there, especially if you're playing a veteran and they use their activatable and they're doing more damage, they get better weak spot hits. I just think that to use a quote-unquote DMR style weapon and only be able to use iron sights is really rough. It's kind of the design flaw with the Headhunter Autogun where I'm not going to choose that over a bolt gun or choose that over a Mark 12 Lasgun right now because I'm going to get more ammo, I'm going to do the same if not more damage, and I'm going to have a better sight picture. So I think the Headhunter Autogun is limited by that poor sight picture as well as ammunition. The heavy Laspistol. If you've watched my streams, you know that this is a meme for me, and I hate this gun. And I think it's because the gun just kind of falls short on so many different ways. It does have an innate bonus crit chance. I think it's like 15%, which is really cool. But watch this. When I crouch, why does my cone of fire get larger? It's the only gun that I know of that does that. That doesn't make much sense to me. It's a pistol. You'd think crouching, like any other gun, would increase my aim. That's a big issue I have. Also, if I shoot this guy in the chest, God, he's like dead, dodging everywhere. It goes through. That's a pretty cool thing that I didn't know that this Laspistol can do. That's on an unarmored unit. But this guy, who has also unarmored, does not pass through. Why? So there seems to be like a lot of really weird, funky things going on with the Laspistol, and maybe it's because there's some certain things in the future coming with it. I don't know, but I think that the cone of fire is really weird with it. I wish it had a better cone of fire, even just when I'm shooting from the hip. It seems nice in this kind of environment, but anything that is not unarmored, it just does terrible damage to. Even that flak was okay, but that's a lot of shots to use on just a simple dreg. That's a dreg, right? Yeah, those are no, that's a scab. That's a scab. Those are the dregs, right? Yeah, that's scab. Aha! But still, like, man, it just takes a lot of shots to do anything to a real special. And that's the real point of using a ranged weapon. So there doesn't seem to be enough reasons to want to take the Laspistol over virtually any other gun. I would rather take the revolver, which has a guaranteed higher stagger and more damage to armored units, than the Laspistol. Sure, I get better mobility, but that mobility is not really suited for me if I'm playing the Zealot, which if I'm at this range, I'm just going to use my weapon. It's not suited for me if I'm playing the Psyker, because I have way better things to take advantage of, not including my staffs or staves. And if I'm playing my Veteran, I'm going to be using even a plasma gun, which we've already talked about, or the bolter, or any of the better auto guns, or the Mark 12 Lasgun. It just feels like it doesn't have a use. And maybe because in the future we can maybe dual wield them, or maybe we can use them with a melee weapon. Maybe those things are why the Laspistol feels so bad, but right now it feels out of place and weird. And I don't think it's simply a damage modifier increase, right? It's the cone of fire, it's the use case, it's so many different things that I think hold the Laspistol back. One of the most prolific first-person shooter weapons from like Wolfenstein and Doom up to now is a combat shotgun, right? It's always the bloody pulper of things. You shoot things and things just kind of get deleted. And it's such a fun weapon to use in so many games. And it's still actually kind of fun in this game, but it still feels funky. To kind of something I did not note with anything I've talked about so far is the rolls on everything we're talking about are going to drastically change how that weapon's used. This is a very good roll for a combat shotgun. It's near maxed out, it's got good blessing with Death Spitter, and it's got great damage bonuses to flak on unarmored. So those are all things to kind of consider with what I've been showing you thus far. It does create a bit of a bias in the video, but nonetheless, the combat shotgun has a funky kind of pattern. Let's take a look at the shots on this thing. So I'm going to use this little placard here as a kind of a show and tell. So if I just simply shoot from the hip, you can see that those shots are pretty center mass on the cone right now. If I aim down sight, it's pretty much dead on. It's like a single shot slug, more or less. And then, let it reload. Speed reload is amazing on this weapon. If I use the special, it is a wide horizontal fanning shot. And I think that is my problem here. The shotgun gets a 5% ADS crit chance bonus, which is cool, but I'd rather it be 10. And I think that rather than having it be a single slug, a kind of semi-spread slug, and a fanning shot, I think I'd rather see like something of a, hey, this is your single shot slug. I have my hip fire, which is more of a fanning shot, and then my special attack could be a high AP round, because I'm putting a new round into that gun, man. Like, that's huge. It's not just simply like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna shoot the gun in a different way. Maybe this is like a single round AP shot, or it's a explosive shot, something that's different. Because the problem here is that this is supposed to be this wide horizontal shot is better for hordes, right? Like that's what it's for. But it takes so long to really kind of do this reliably that it really relegates the gun to not being used for hordes in the way that I would think a shotgun is used for them. I understand maybe that the hip fire is maybe supposed to be more of a run and gun style, and that's cool and all, but I think that it kind of makes the shotgun feel a little clunky from a UX standpoint. And you could make the argument, sure, like, hey, having certain blessings does change the way that works. But I think that that is an innate flaw in and of itself, is relying on blessings to get the most out of a gun in the perceived way you'd want to use it. So I think the shotgun, if it just had all right, that's a strong slug, that's a good burst, and this is an explosive or high AP round, and it would also make sense, right? Okay, it's a hard target. AP round. Like, it just will kind of fit the profile of even doing that. So I think that those things kind of make the combat shotgun really stand out rather than just simply increasing its damage. The Psyker Staves are some of the most enjoyable weapons in the game, except for the Trauma Staff. It just doesn't feel like it has a place in the game for the Psyker. If you want to really lock down and crowd control a whole entire room, use the Surge Staff. If you want to clear a whole horde, use the Pergatus. If you want to do some high target damage at range, use the Void Strike. And even then, you could probably be better off using a, a head pop to kill a hard target with the Void Strike. It does give you ranged horde clear, which is kind of fun though. But the Trauma Staff is really, really kind of punishing. So I'm going to charge this all the way up, get this nice and big, and left click. It sends everything reeling all over the place. So if I'm playing with other people that are using any kind of melee, well, they can't use brutal momentum on their axe, or they can't get any of the benefits of hitting multiple things if they're a zealot, or if they're trying to use the power sword, well, they can't go ahead and cleave through them, or if they're an Ogren, they can't use their thunder maul, or yeah, their little maul to kind of their maul to kind of keep things kind of tightly packed and knocked over. So the Trauma Staff just feels so out of place. And on top of it, it generates a ton of peril. So to get this all the way to max, about 22%. And I use it, okay, well, I'm up to 54 after one. Okay, now I'm at 100. That's just two simply mass charges of this thing. And on top of it, it doesn't really kill things when it does do that. I can spam do this, but it's almost worse. I'm barely doing any damage. So it doesn't feel like it has a place in the accoutrement, in the range of staves for the Psyker, because every other staff does what it does better, or it does it in a more succinct fashion that doesn't send things all over the place so other people can't take advantage of it. So I think this thing needs to, like, I think a lot of the other weapons so far that we've talked about up to this point, it's not as drastic of a change, right? Like, oh, you know, tool this, tool that, change this, change that, maybe even add more ammo, blah, 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 blah. But with this, it needs to be like rebuilt from the ground up. It's massive knockback here. It's massive warp peril generation. I mean, granted, this is not an amazing one. Well, that's actually not that bad. Well, consider me surprised. But all these things, sure, they're great, but this thing still just sends everything all over the place. And it really is a rough staff to use in conjunction with any of the other ones that are way better at what it does. It's everyone's favorite Deathcore of Krieg gun. The Lucius Lasgun. The Lucius-pattern Lasgun. It feels funky. It feels awkward. I don't like it. And I know I just recently got an increase to its damage, and I know that that increase has gotten better. This is not an amazing roll on this pattern Lasgun, but I think, and I think the community far and wide agrees that here, there's a rail on this gun and I'm not even using it, man. Like, give me a better sight picture for what is effectively a single shot DMR in a different way than, say, a Lasgun, right? That is a semi-automatic rifle. This, I have to charge up, and if I miss that shot, well, like that, man, I just waste that whole charge. So it sucks because that's where the damage of this herein lies, right? If I'm playing on tier 5 damnation, I'm going to be using that charge up even if I'm going for body shots. Using the max charge and hitting head spots with this thing and you're activatable on veteran is extremely satisfying and does a ton of damage. It just needs a better sight picture. And its special needs to not be the clunkiest thing in the world. The special on almost every gun that does have a melee is supposed to give you some way to kind of get some air so that you can shoot them or switch weapon to a melee weapon. And this thing doesn't do any of that. And it's a bayonet. So why am I just going to kind of like sloppily use this? I'd rather have it be a big high damage stagger and a thrust at the same time. So I think the Lucius pattern, it got a damage increase, and that damage increase is very wanted, but it needs a better sight picture. I think that the non-charge shot should be a better fire rate. And I know that there's 3 different marks and they have varying fire rates, and that's something to be considered here. But I just think that its biggest holdback is this charge. And after you get into, I think after difficulty 4, this charge stops becoming a fun, reliable way to play and more of a liability. And that's, I think, the biggest problem with this gun is I want this to be a fun gun that I can use far into any difficulty. But because of this, it becomes a little bit, like I said, of a liability where I can't just reliably hit targets at a good range. And obviously in the Psychanium, I mean, even back here, I've got still pretty good sight on that thing's head, right? Like I can nail this thing, no big deal. But the problem is I'm not going to have that clear line of sight in a normal mission. I'm not going to have this optimal lighting in the mission. Heaven forbid that this is a lights out mission modifier, which I don't even know where the hell that's gone anymore. Dude, be so sick if we have IR scopes in this game. It's not Call of Duty, but it'd be cool if we had different sight pictures on these pattern las guns that would give us a much better use for the Lucius pattern Lucius-pattern gun. The Death Core of Krieg gun. That one. About that, it brings our video here to a close. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below, are there more weapons to these 12 that you would add to this list? Say, hey, you know what? I'm really not liking the stub revolver. I'm really struggling to find its place in the game. Or maybe you've found ways to use some of the weapons on this list and you want to tell me, hey, use this blessing combination to really get the most out of, say, I don't know, the Lucius last pattern, which we just talked last pattern, the Lucius-pattern Lasgun. I'm clearly struggling with that, but go ahead and let me know in the comment section. Love to get your guys' feedback because, like I've said, there are things like the infantry autoguns, which are actually very strong, very good weapons. They just need more ammo. There's no real design flaw in that. That's a simple patch fix. But I think that some of these weapons, or the weapons on this list, need more than just simply more ammo or more damage or more stagger or more accuracy or whatever it is. They need conventional or changes to the way that these weapons actually operate. And I think that is the biggest distinction I'm trying to make here. There are some guns that just need more, or some melee weapons that just need better damage, but some just have terrible combos, and that's why they're on the list or what have you. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below what you are feeling, how you're feeling it. I know we're hopefully looking out for some more news in the future when it comes to Fat Shark and Darktide, and I'm hoping to get that in the next week or so. We've got more streams ahead, so head on over to my Twitch at Italian Spartacus. Give me a follow so you can help me test some of these off-meta weapons. We'll have some fun with a bunch of different blessings and perks to see what we can get out of them. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one, and take care.